Hello everyone. I was having a bit of hiccup when I was starting stream, so I had to disconnect my internet cabling. I was trying to figure out why my upload bitrate was so low. It was as low as 192 kbps. And normally is 5k kbps upload speed, rather bitrate. Before I was getting around 100 200 kbps. I was trying to figure out why I even turned off my router and everything. Turns out that I had to reconnect my LAN cable, the cable from my router to my laptop. I don't know why. Maybe there's an effect of not having restarted this thing. I haven't restarted my laptop since yesterday. After yesterday's stream, I was playing and then I fell asleep, and then I started playing again. Honestly, in the past 2 months, this is the most I've played Onigiri in these 3 days. Alright, so what was I trying to show? I was saying today I don't have anything special planned. I intended to, but then I lost myself. I started seeing what I was missing, making my to-do list in Onigiri. Well, it's not an actual list, just seeing what I wanted to do, what I was doing, catching up myself. I still didn't see what I was missing for veteran weapons. Today I have planned what I was working towards yesterday, the Celio weapon. I also got its upgraded recipe, the Odachi Celio Lucid. And for that I need 60 potions. But as you all might remember, there were also two other items, and I wanted to exchange for them as well. There are two items Mark 99's accessories, headband and wing, and those cost 15 potions each. So in total, I'm looking at 90 potions. 60 for the weapon, 30 for the item exchange. And I'm at 55. I was farming this single dungeon which drops this. I already have enough of these other items. I already need, in total I need 520. I have enough, but I am short of purification potion. I also need bedrock to make the items, make the Celio Odachi, the first level. I have enough. I have more than enough. I need 30 of those. I have 59 now. That's for the first level. I'm not going for the second level or the third level if I'm lucky enough to get it. I don't think I will be. I've never even seen it. So for the first run, I'll show you all how I was running the dungeon in my time, and then I'll actually run it normally. I was using Majestic Massacre for long range sniping, and look, it got even up to 47 level skill. I thought it'd take a long time. I even said so as much yesterday. But now it's already at level 47 thanks to me just spamming it. Clearing whole dungeons with just this. So that happened. I'm very close to it. I think I'm halfway close. I'm halfway there. Because the experience needed to go from 45 to 50 is more than that needed to go from 40 to 45. So I think I'm halfway there. Or maybe a bit less. Still a long way to go though. So let's go. I'm going to be spamming this dungeon until I get 90 of this. And then I'll exchange all of it. I get 2 per run. 2 or 3 per run. Last run I just did, I got 2. Oh yeah, my login bonus ended. Oops. So how many do I have left? 45. No, 45 is 400. For 90. For 90 I have 35 left. Half of those 17.5. I need around 17 runs. If I'm lucky. I think you can also get 1 drop. I'll be running the hard mode so it's no biggie. Oh, not refreshed. Oh, I'll also be checking in the party recruitment. So if there's any event carries running, then I'll go on there. But as you can see, right now there's nothing going on. No one's farming the event right now. If there's a gala event farm or the new event farm, then I'll join them. I managed to exchange for the accessories from the new event, but I haven't got the skills. My cough's not going away. I don't know why. It's been around a week now. Well, I also had a cold. This run is just showing you how I was doing it before on my own time. A crit can easily one-hit KO them. If it crits, and it almost does half the time, it takes them, any mob out in one hit. However, even if it doesn't, the whole rotation is enough. 2 or 3 hits are enough. Except for those robots. The Benkei units. Those need 2 skills, 2 full rotations. And I don't think they can get crit. At least I haven't seen one get crit. This is what I've been doing for the past couple of runs. I also did the same for the other dungeons in this series. Like here, super long range sniping through the boundary walls. As long as the target appears, it's good to go. And these mobs are such that they will only appear if I can target them. If they appear, I can target them. However, the Benkei units can target me even if they haven't appeared. See. Yes, here it comes. That's a Benkei unit. See the map? There's another one coming straight at me. There's one Benkei unit out. That's the unit that's coming at me. And there's another one. That one. See it went away. I can't target it even. It's reached out of bounds and that reset. Even when I can't see it, it can't see me. I'm still targeted. See? That stupid robo. They have a super long range. Now there should be another one targeting me now. There it is. 2 more. And I don't like them. They are very strong. And I can't take them out in one hit. So that's it. This is basically what I've been doing. Extremely safe. A bit slow, but also very efficient. After this run, I'll exchange for the 2. Oh, one was left. Okay. Yeah, he can reach me here now. I wonder what effect will I gain after it evolves. Will it be continuous? Not attacking per second, but a continuous discharge. That'd be great. Because it seems like it is. At least visually. Oh. I lost a target. He went out of my vision. Even if I can't really see him. Under the 5. Under the hit counter. Purple. Moving away from me. I can even tell their alignment. Which way they're facing. Thanks to this new update. Yay! Next, the ambush room. But luckily, I don't have to go there. In the room, even. I can just super long snipe there. And there, the stupid robots come. This can still attack me here. That, where I am right now, is within the bounds. They can come charge at me. If I crit on those androids, it's a 1-hit kill. If not, they take 2 to 3 hits. Come on, robots. They're 2 left. Where are they? There. See? As soon as I see them, they see me. They see me even before I see them, actually. See? This is not out of bounds for them, so they don't respawn back. He's seeing me. He's seeing me. I am his target right now. For some reason, he's not coming towards me. If I attack, he will. Oh! Yay! Stay there. He's deciding what to do. If I go near, he will surely attack. So I'm not going there. My sword is the longest range weapon I have. Even though I'm a bow user. Oh, ironic. Sounds like something out of one of those cultivation manual. No? I was reading one of those. Even just before a stream even. It's called Keep a Low Profile, Sect Leader. It's a very nice manhwa. At least it shows emotional development of the characters, which is very hard to find in cultivation novels. Very hard. Oh, it's not a novel, but a manhwa. But still, I read from novel. I haven't read the original novel. Now then, time for the boss. Bosses. These guys are easiest to beat for me because I have a weakness against one of them. Super effective weakness. You can do cap damage. See? 99 multiple. I should probably be moving around, right? I'm not a short range vanguard right now. I'm a long range attacker. Are you out now? You are out. However, dodge her aerial blast. That's very strong. And adieu. He does normal damage. But still enough. The first hit of his does cap damage, which then reduces. There are 4 hits. Oh, I think I do higher than cap. If it crits, if the second or third, fourth hit crit, I do greater than cap. I never noticed. I thought it was always lower than cap. But no, only the first hit is cap. Yahoo! I just noticed something new. Interesting. Now, next I'll try to fight normally. Going in close. I still will be sniping those robots though. And it will be easier to get them because they come to me anyways. I love this BGM. Now then, repair. Almost said heal. Today will be a short stream because my throat does not feel good. Hey. Maybe I'll just go for an hour because I'll be doing the same thing. I don't think it will be interesting just streaming the same thing over and over and over again. I don't really have any interesting topics to talk about. Nothing really happened between yesterday and today. I guess something that happened is that I have to start studying for my next course from tomorrow, or rather in a couple of hours. Oh. That's not interesting, is it? What are these guys weak to anyway? Dark? Holy! These guys are weak to holy. Oh, I see. These guys are super weak to holy. What about these androids? Fire, right? These guys are fire, right? No? Okay, so those guys have extremely long range. Enough so that charge shot, they can hit me before I can hit them with the exorcist arrow range, which is the same as the charge shot range. Okay. Okay, oh, time to snipe. No, 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 you, oh no, you don't get here. I'm not fighting them on my own, on front. That's one down. There's two down. Come on, attack. Three down. Ah, oops. I got too close. Ah, these guys have a ridiculously long range. Noted. Don't get close carelessly. Noted. Ah, so these guys can come this far. Okay. I always kill them from afar so they didn't even get the chance to get this close to me. I'm finding new things about their range, their mobility, or rather their movement range. Hmm. Alright, I was fighting them normally. I forgot. Ah. Oh no, you don't. Okay, you're resistant to fire. That means you're weak to water. Oh? They're attacking me. Even if I haven't seen them. Oh yeah. We just found out that their range is high. Ah. So they can target me even if I haven't targeted them. Hey. I'm not going in the ambush though. Because of the robots. See? 3 hits and they're out. That's one. Cooldown complete. Target done. Target acquired. Move back. Attack. Block. He's out. Next. Where's the next one? Target, target, target. Done. Back, 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 back. Guard. There we go. All of them are out. Now let's see what they do with a room full of them. Okay. Electric shots. And the paralysis dark thunder. Whatever it's called. And they're out. The secret passage. That worm is apparently weak to wind. That's why he's getting knocked out in one hit. He doesn't get knocked out in one hit by other skills of mine. Uh-huh. See? 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 Just one hit. The second wave did not hit him. Because he was already out. KO'd. Okay, after this I'll exchange. Oh. Almost switched to Horihime. That would have been bad. Because I need Horihime to take out Yoshitsune Android. Android Yoshitsune. Android Yoshi. There we go. Attack. Where'd he go? Nope. Yep. Wow, Shizuka Android is attacking me from there, from the side. Now they're in a line. I think I should be getting Hound Dog in this, in between us. Just attack with long range. Yep. Hound Dog takes damage differently. Rather, all mounts take damage differently. Even if that attack would have knocked my character out, he doesn't take as much damage to his stamina. He takes a fixed amount of damage in his stamina from every specific type of attack. Unless if it's yawn. Unless if it's there are some attacks, some bosses that can specifically attack mount. If they attack a mount, 1 or 2 hit, your mount is gone. It's out of stamina. Okay, this was a particularly bad showing. Usually I'm able to take her out without needing to attack her myself. There. Nah. Also, yeah, about the equipment organization. I figured out that it's based on time. So if I want my equipment to be ordered a certain way, I have to take note of the time I unequip them. Like if I want this equipment, Magatama, to be shown is exactly this, in this order, then I have to take one out like this, wait a minute and then take another out. Otherwise, what will happen is it will be shown as this. And I don't want it to be ordered like this. The ordering is important for me very much. So it's based on time. I have to wait a minute to switch, which means I have to wait at least minimum of 4 minutes to completely switch my equipment, or maybe 3 if you can skip the last one. Yeah, a minimum of 3 minutes. But well, it would take the 4th minute to switch the last equipment. And the same order also applies to this, same logic. And I haven't tried my weapons, but I'm willing to bet also this. Oh, I identified that. I forgot to consume that. Let me just quickly do this. Oh yeah, the quest I was doing gave me this. I could have gotten her awakening, but they're both gold neon, normal gold neon rewards, so I'll get them eventually. That's what happened last time. However, I feel like I haven't gotten them as much this time. I already had around level or awakening 3 or 4 last time by now in this amount of time. I'm sleepy. Me sleepy. I'm going to exchange for 99's headband, Sukumo's headband and wing. Energy line is called Sukumo. It's just the reading name, reading style. You can call it Kyuchukyu or Sukumo. And 6 is, well, 6. Num num num. Our item shop is also open here, which makes it much easier. See, I already have 60. If I wanted to, I could create the weapon right now. But I want this more. There. Clear. Ah, so the item shop closes. I see. You know what? Let's repair and actually do the main quest. I don't have anything else I want to do right now. I said I was gonna do Gala and get the limited exchange ticket. I'm not gonna do that right now. Because I'm being farming this. So that would take a while. A very long while. Let's see. Where are they? Oh. Here they are. To take this underground passage, you can infiltrate the Palace of Rain. I didn't know there was such a passage. It's a top secret shortcut that only a few will know. Not even Saisei used to know about it. Oh. Your two colleagues don't even know about it. Oh. Ah. That's Orion swears. Maybe here's the Kaiso worm that was troublesome for me. Should I clear it? Let's clear it. I do need a change of pace. Also, it will be a chance to get main story inside stream, on stream rather. At least a bit of it. I completely missed the Lordum stream. Lordum, and completely did not stream that, which would have been nice. I could have used that stream and then for my future playthrough video, but that would be useless. I feel like we're always running around in underground passages. All the caves look the same, all the forests look the same, all the rooms look the same. It feels like a never-ending nightmare. Ain't that meta? They use the same dang dungeon layout for everything. Okay, so sewers, nest, inert-looking areas, you name it. We've been to it over and over. Ew, what is that? Oh, Gokoburi-san. So this is where you hang out. Yeah! Get it with fire! Ew, I'm done. This is so gross. I can't deal with bugs. Oi, oi, you're gonna get left behind. What the heck are you doing? Just cause we're underground doesn't mean there isn't a threat lurking around the corner. Yes, please be careful. Noted. Noted, noted, noted. I see the threat. And the threat sees me. The threat very much sees me. Lightning flash shot has the highest range. Unfortunately, I can't target. So I have to manually target. Lightning flash shot. So if it's an enemy moving sideways, it will miss if you are not careful. Hmm? Yeah, too far? There we go. No reason not to do this. Yeah. So I found out that even if I am too far and I target them and then I use my skill and it doesn't reach, if I get close enough to them, then the skill will automatically recalibrate and target the remaining hits on them. It does recalibrate, yes, if I do get close to them. Nutepo. Norikabe. Poison Wall. Ara. Musha. Warrior. Ghost Warrior. Bakeneko. Monster Cat. I mean, this is definitely easy. Makes for a boring stream, right? See, this is what I was talking about. See? It did not reach, then I got closer and it reached. And it attacked it on its own. I did not have to use the skill a second time. Where am I supposed to go again? Ah, there. The green light. Also the map. Always use the map. I never actually looked at the green lights. They're a bit hard to find. Is this an ambush? This looks like an ambush. This feels and looks like an ambush. Yeah, there it is. There it is. There it is. It really is. All those cannoneers. And a big Gaikotsu. Big scary. Halloween has passed, man. You can sleep. You can sleep, Jeff. Halloween has passed. Goodbye. Where's your brother Taff? Is he called Taff? I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. See, recalibrated. No. No, I'm not getting close enough yet. Oh, still not enough. There. This is a bit too close for comfort for me. Bye bye, Gaikotsu. Tan. Hello? Looks like another one got recalibrated. Okay, no secret path. Looks like. Huh? If we go up from here, we should be in the inner parts of the Palace of Rain. I can hear the footsteps of the guards. Oh, that's right. There are some crazy robots up there. Okay. There's Chan. Benki. Benki-san? It's Benki-san's foot. It's Benki's footsteps. Huh? Wait, Yoshitsune-san. Okay. Are we fighting Benki? Again? Oh, how many times does this make it? 3? Oh. Ah, it's the actual Benki. Intruder alert! Commencing extermination of intruders. Benki! It's me! Katudo! Yoshitsune-chan, watch out! Shizuka goes in. Gomenasai, Here it comes! Ah, boy. Again, you bucket of bolts. Again. Yeah, he is strong. He is very strong. He was strong then, he's still so strong now. Yeah, just keep doing that. Just keep doing that. Yeah, don't get close. Yeah. Alright. You were just far away. Ow. No. Oh no, you don't. Ah. Here we go. Semiconductor. Mark semiconductor. That I meant. Ah, here it is. Aribu-san. Come over here. Huh? Are you going to use it here? We don't know, we will come barging in. Ah, that's right. I've been kind of busy. Kaguya! Aribu, yes? Now here comes actual Ori.
なんでわらわに精神感応してきたの？この波形、月に置いてきた羽衣から？
And she's not from the afterworld. The land of the darkest night. Or whatever it's called. Lasting night.
ここはコズミックネイブル？エントリーしに行きましょう。
No, this is not the Cosmic League. Cosmic Crux.
あなたが織姫さんですか？ランクめっちゃ高そうなカスタマイズしてますね。
You have customized your mech so much. Ah.
コズミック？違うし。
Oh, she knows about it.
それより織姫ってその名前で呼ばれるの久しぶり。そっちは月人で、あなたは？
Maybe yes. I'm Arabius. Only from the lands of last night.
これにスルー
Apparently.
された。
I was ignored. Yep. That's the part that was cut off. I'm from there.
月の空から見えるよね。
Yep.
研究とよく見上げてた。その地球人がどうしてわらわとおしゃべりしたいの？
Turn off your ship. Your ship's getting berserk. Turn off your car, rather.
実は今月と地球が大変なことになってて。
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
で、なんとか手伝ってもらえないかなって。
She's being very patient.
なんでわらわが地球人に協力しないといけないの？
You can get anime.
さあさあ、そうなんですよ。
The oh, oh, oh. No, she's just being Kaguya. She having a mental breakdown or something. No, I think she's just communicating with Orihime. Well, she sure is dramatic. She doesn't need to act like she's doing some kind of ritual. Seems that all Kage Oni-chan has to do is to touch the rhyme and to be affected by its power. I guess that makes sense. Since last time when she wore the diamond, she completely transformed into a different person. So this is what's going on while we're conversing. It's not in our head. We're actually conversing. So this, that was quite the battle. This is still quite a battle, yes. Anyways, it looks like she's having a hard time trying to talk to her. Look at her forehead is getting all creased. No, she's getting angry. This is the first time I see Kaguya with that kind of facial expression. Ah, no. I can't do that to Anime-san. Yamete. Oh, okay. What's she thinking about now? Huh? Also, what did they want to tell Anime-san? Let it go with that I meant. Perhaps you should wait.
わらわ、君のこと気に入っちゃった？
Hara, she's here. She said something? I don't think so.
複雑です。
Where is Orihime-san? As soon as you held the diamond, you collapsed and started moaning and moving about. All crazy. Huh? You mean just now? Were you speaking to Orihime? No, I mean, yes, I was. It looks like she will help us out. Sort of. Seem to be very nervous. So, what do you mean by sort of? I'm not entirely sure, but anyways, I'm begging you, please stop the Seishoku. Because it has been modified already, controlling it from afar might not be. It's better to do it directly, right, Arivia-san? So we have to go where the Seishoku is. Seishoku. Not Seishoku, Seishoku. It was in the research facility, right? Yep, the place Riku took us all to. Riku 6. That's what she is called. Riku told us all to. Took us all to. It should be around Oceanus Procellarium. Hi. Let's go to Oceanus Procellarium. Hi? Huh? You're Sitsune? Bankia stopped. You're Sitsune-chan. Never mind. Now is not the time for this. If the Seishoku is revived, who knows what will become of the earth. I'm okay. Let's go. Yes. Thank you. Last time things somehow turned out okay. I'm sure things will be fine this time around as well. I can't put the earth in danger just because of something like this. Let's stop the Seishoku before it's revived. Is that a new location? Also, what's this Mark Semiconductor? Is that a new item shop? Hmm? Oh, oh. Looks like this is a semiconductor that is used in 6 and 99 models. That Sakaki-san developed it, but I don't know anything else. I could not keep up with the conversation due to the subject being too hard to understand. 6 and 99 models. Is it their weapon? I wonder. Will I get their weapon accessories? Or other accessories that look like their weapons? Well, let's go to the research facility. I don't like being stopping at a cliffhanger, after all. I don't like cliffhangers. Don't like cliffhangers. I'm sure most people would agree. Yay! However, there's one thing. I will complete every single dungeon level before going on to the next one. That means fighting you on normal as well. Maybe my skill will even reach level 48. Huh? Okay, one it is enough, so I can fight normally here. Oh, wrong way.
眼科で妖怪に凸とかどうかな。
そこです。お覚悟を。そこです。そこです。
Poison.
そこです。そこです。
Handa Mashimusha. I don't know what that means.
オチであります。
これで決めます。これで決めます。
日々の研鑽が伺えるな。
これで決めます。お覚悟を。
日々の研鑽が伺えるな。
I'm using my sword more like a bow. I like this. I like this very much.
あ、スレ落ちた。
Okay, this is a bit dangerous.
オチであります。
On account of all the cannons.
やるじゃないか。と。日々の剣。なるほど。良い目をしている。兵意を身につければさらに強くなれるぞ。
There we go. Ara. Ara? I don't know how the targeting worked there. The enemy got defeated and then recalibrated to another enemy. I don't know. I'm not questioning it. It works. If it works, it works. And it worked very well. Oh, this is a very short dungeon. Huh. It's already the boss room. Okay, come on, you bucket of words. Stop getting broken. Well, this time you weren't broken. You were just taken over.
銀妖精わらわのおもちゃ可愛くて強いんだから
Oh, there was Yui. Now, time to call upon Orihime. She wants a date with me, doesn't she? She would have to get in line. I forget what she asked for in return. It was something along those lines. That's why Kakui had such a reaction.
よし共に行こう
Where am I to go? Here? No?
いい腕だ
Since I'm here
一
anyway.
緒に戦おう
何か用か何か用か
安価で妖怪に凸とかどうかな
So I was here. I'm gonna go here? Oh.
よし
Oh.
共に行こう
Okay, I was very near where I had to go, so. Oops. I want a faster mount. Hound is actually slower in terms of mount speed. Well, no, I don't think there are any mounts faster than the other, are they? Are there? Are Fusion Raijin faster? I forget. I know that Fusion Raijin are the same speed.
いいさ
Makami is definitely fastest because of his skills. That heavy move, dash skills. Most of his skills are dash skills. Okay, where am I to go in? Okay. Moonfire. I don't want those. Yeah, I don't want anyone targeting me from behind. So I will take them all out. Yeah, these Akane are not the Dungeon Akane, so they're
安
weak.
価で妖怪に凸とか
Taken out by one hit. And it's a good thing these don't refresh immediately. They respawn fast enough, just not immediately. Huh? Not that far. I was starting in this guy. Oh, hello. There's the place where the Saishugo was at, right? Looks like we got new recruits. I guess they decided to increase the security. Even the gates are shut, as expected. They don't want anyone to interrupt them from reviving the Seishuku. What should we do? Should we beat them up and go in? Well, we could. There's the only entrance, right? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Now its Bloom Research Facility happens to have a separate entrance. Well, I don't think it's really an entrance, but... Oh, really? It's but an abandoned factory that is no longer used. Back when we were changing facilities, we used it as a pathway to carry all our important materials. It remains intact. It also has its own set of security though. However, my calculations tell me that you are all well equipped and have the optimal stats needed to take them all. You should be able to go through. We can go through 9 now? No? So we got to move fast. We also got to be stealthy so they don't find us. Not do, don't. But they will find us anyway. We don't do stealth. Alright, we should hurry up then. 99. Sukumo-chan, can you get... Sukumo-san, can you take us? Right away. This way, please. I can't enter Novus Bloom? Ara. I can't enter Novus Bloom normally anymore. Huh. I see. Ah, that's why I was remembering that place. I knew that location was a dungeon. It just was a newer dungeon. Because I kept mistaking Benke's factory for there.
ごめん
But rather Benke's factory was
あ
on a
失礼
higher
し
incline. Up there. Not down here. Down here is a separate dungeon. Oh, here. I was thinking it was there. Okay, ignore me.
何でもお申し付けください
Ignore me. I completely don't remember this one.
いやー
Ignore my ramblings.
今日という街に不時着した時には
何でもお申し付けください
だがいろんな街を歩いてみるのも良い勉強になった
This is it. Do you know where the message is? Yes, I know. You mean there? Oh, new story. Alright then, let's be careful. There isn't much time until Seishu gets revived. We can get to a Seishu by infiltrating research value from the abandoned facility. Let's go. Clear abandoned facility. I guess. Let's go then. Nothing to do but go. Is this the one with the annoying Gaiso worm? That truly hard one? Which also requires a secret passage to go through. To get to. Because those guys were level 1. This one would be level 130. Or something like that. Very hard. But I don't think it was this dungeon. The pathway to Nobis Bloom Research Facility is this way. There are abandoned androids around here, so please be careful. Abandoned androids? Androids whose disposal would cost too much, so they were just left here. I see. So they must hold some kind of grudge and attack people? Well, maybe? Oh? If the androids or robots attack in retaliation, it's most likely because we were programmed to do so. They could also just be set to their security settings and were attacked because their objective would be to guard the facility rather than retaliate. Well then, in that case, I guess that means that even after being abandoned, they are still fulfilling their duty. What it must mean to be made with an artificial heart. Yeah. Too bad you have a heart. And we're getting crits. That was the crit. And that was another crit. Okay. As soon as I said it, I got crits 3 times in a row. Awesome. That was not a crit, that was just a back attack. Normal. Okay. Low range crit. I don't think I have secret. Just a high roll attack. Normal.
さっきからかぐやという娘が私のことを
あ
そのものすごく見てくるんだが私に何かついているのか
So they are not attacking me yet. I'm not close enough. I should be close enough now. There. Now I am. There. Okay. I'm not taking a chance with those robos. Banky units. They're very strong. No one's targeting me? He already attacked me
安価で妖怪に突
from
っ
that
込
far
んだ
away.
のかな
Okay. So these guys are further than my limit in my range. Great. That place should be safe. Oh, level 48. Yay. Just 2 more levels. Just 2 more levels to go. This fever is really helping me. This thing.
安価で妖怪に突とか
This fever time. Skill EXP plus 20% is really helping me. Also, I'm using this a lot. I'm using this exclusively to clear the dungeon.
ソードウィング君もこの星に興味を持っていたな鳥型のロボなんだが
Yeah,
綺麗
these
な
guys
美
are
しさを悠
not
々と飛びたいらしくてね
much of a threat.
ごめん
破壊せよ。これで決めます。破壊せよ。破壊せよ。せいや。
Also, I found something unique. Looky here, look here. All 13 basic skills are levels 56. This never happens. It means I use all of them equally. And this
失礼落ちた
skill is my highest. I obtained this decapitated scream Augie the last. And yet I use it so much that it's higher than my basic skills now. And Augie Everlasting Gale is the lowest because it costs too much durability to use. It's very expensive to use. My bow breaks down fastest if I use that. So better to use the Ogi, Scream, and then my other skills. And at level 46, one of them is maxed at 60 because it's a rank 6. 6 times 10. That's their max level limit of the skill. Cursed arrow at 60 would be maxed. The other two are maxed at 70. These are also max at 70. I don't know what's the maximum is for Sublime. I would hope it's 10, but I think it would be 8. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out someday. Someday. What that day to ever come and the server does not shut down. I truly hope this does not happen though. I do like this game, you know. It's old, but it's still. I like this. That's why I'm still playing even after my account was, even after the server was shut down. The EN server. They made a cash grab Steam server. That's really not a separate server, just a different login client. And they don't transfer data from the Steam client to their normal client. Just a cash grab.
やるじゃない
Better to
か
just download their own server that they provide on their website. Sorry, on client that they provide on their website. The JP client that does have options to translate languages.
ごめん
3 languages, I believe. 3 or 4. How many languages does it have?
君もコスモリーグに参加してみないか自らの部を磨くにはいい場所だぞ
It has 3 languages. Where am I to go again? There? Ah, up top. And around. And then below. I have no idea what I'm attacking. Oh, a Magairu? Ah, now that's a problem. Wind. He's immune to wind. That's a problem. Ah, Penguin Wind Penguin
他に凸とかどこ
That's who I attack. Ah, so if I can't attack them, it won't even reach. If there are other enemies around, it will just cycle between them. I see, I see. The frogs aren't the danger. It's these androids. They can actually knock me out. In other words, they can kill me. See? I got down half HP.
ごめん あ、スレ落ちた
What was that? What was that? It's coming at me so
イージ
fast.
オーゲン君かいい選手だ目を見ればわかる
Ah, that was a Banky unit. Ah, I'm already targeted. Why are they weak? Why are they weak? 3 attacks? They take 4. Oh,
安価で妖怪の凸とかどうかな
yeah, that's how much they take. Now that's more like it.
スウェーを身につけると敵との接近戦で優位に立ち回れるぞ今度
Please tell me they're not
スウェーが
resurrecting.
得意なロボを紹介しよう
Because a Bankai factory has those CPUs that if you don't take them out, they keep resurrecting.
日々の研鑽が伺えるな
Anyone else? No. Yosh. Sige. Next room. Oh, he has reached level 70. Awesome. Okay. Is this the dragon arc? No, it is not. It's something else. What is it? If we just pass this part up ahead. What is that? Everyone be careful. Ah, the 100 eye. Yakumi.
わらわが飽きるまで
We meet again.
わらわのおもちゃ可愛くて強いんだから
I guess we meet the first time in the story from here. And then he runs first to Ivis's dungeon.
ちょっと優勢
Yeah, poison. Poison Sven. He has poison Sven.
わらわが遊んで
There we go. This wasn't so hard. I have a feeling I'll need those semiconductors though. Up ahead from here is the new research facility. Please be careful. How much until Seishoku is revived? Checking remainder. 5% left until revival is complete. We're deep in it, aren't we? Let's get a move on it. I think I said something to Orihime that made her infatuated with me. In Kaguya, when Orihime asked her, "Why should I help you?" I say me, I mean the MC. Oh. Oh. Cool. Okay. Intermission.
何か用か
Honestly, I want to end here. Yeah, it's a bit too late now. I really should be going right now.
何か用か
Let's talk to Kaguya if she opens up a new space, and that's good, but
ご用件をどうぞ 何でもお申し付けください
okay, no new shops yet. Let's see.
私頑張ります
They added this quest thing, so the quest does not automatically start. That's good. Aribia-san, can I talk to you for a second? I want to tell you, I want to put up a flag. Which flag? Romance flag? You see, the next dungeon, I think it's going to get real crowded. And you see, I've been thinking about doing this lately. Yeah? For now, after we finish the next boss, we could use that as the marking point. Okay. Anyways, I just want to get your opinion. Okay. What you on? Okay, I will raise a flag. Yeah, are you ready? Let's go, Olivia-san. Ah, I see, I see.
私頑張ります
Comet. Ah, I see. That's. I'll save that for tomorrow. I'll save that dungeon for tomorrow. That would be epic climax for Kaguya's, or rather Orihime's descent.
わかった。協力し
I'll
よう。
clear this normal mode right now. If I get out where I think I should get out. Yep. Ara. Ara. So that's here. Okay. I wonder why Amaterasu and Susanoo don't have any awakenings. Instead of any descents, they should be ascending. They should be regaining their full power temporarily through my power. But who would be the conduit? The power provider? They themselves? How would I unlock their power? Come on, there should have been something. No? For Susanoo and Amaterasu?
そこです。そこです。これで決め
Not one hit.
そこです。
Huh? Yes, one hit.
覚悟
やるじゃないか。やるじゃないか。
Yes, one
そ
hit.
こです。
Even weak hit,
そ
yes.
こです
Blue Fang 5 also works.
日々の研鑽が伺
Not
え
to
るな。
mention 6.
これで決めます。
あ、スレ落ちた。
I'm still not taking my chances with those. They're dangerous. Ah. So those guys take only one hit now.
日々の研鑽が伺えるな。
That is good. That is very good. Ah, he's locked on me. He's not locked on me anymore.
日々の研鑽が伺えるな。日々の研鑽が伺えるな。
There. He was turning around. That was him locking on to me. I'll switch for this one.
口うるさいお姉さんたちから理由をつけて逃げられたから、これはこれでいいかも。
Which Oni-chan? Haruto Oni-chan?
研鑽が伺えるな。いや
Haruto
ー、
Oni-chan?
京という町に越した
What?
少々焦ったな。
Are you talking about Shizuka?
いろんな町を歩いてみるのも良い勉強になった。
What?
ちょっと優勢。
Or were you saying that you will compete with Haruto Oni-chan?
やるじゃないか。
I really wish I could hear what I could understand what she was saying. The whimsical alien species. Not just a Lunarian, but a complete alien. An immortal, if you will. A true immortal. One of those Wuxia cultivation world immortals.
落ちてあります。
How do I go down again? Ah.
Yes.
アスカ君は日々の研鑽が伺えるな。
そこです。
日々の研鑽が伺えるな。
お覚悟を。
落ちてあります。
不思議な感覚だな。他の者に身を任せるというのは
I completely did not use Hound Dog. That's nice as well.
乗り
That's
心
fine
地
too.
はどうだった？
これで決めます。
Will Slice work on these guys?
これで決めます。そこです。
やるじゃないか。
Does somewhat. Slice does work
そ
somewhat.
こです。これで決めます。そこです。
I need 3 hits. Okay.
そこです。お覚悟、お覚悟、お覚悟。
はっせい。
お覚悟、そこです。これで決めます。
I think I'll have to
せい。はっ
mute in a second.
そこでこれで決めます。
ごめん。
いやー、今日という街に不時着した時には少々焦ったな。だが、
This is a long
い
dungeon.
ろんな街
I did
を
not
歩いて
expect
みる
this
の
to
も
be this long,
良い勉強になった。
in all fairness.
これで決めます。これで決めます。
Ara.
お覚悟。
ごめん。ごめん。
Yeah, I can't take long here. I'm sorry.
お覚悟。
I have to end stream soon. Like right away.
不思議な感覚だな。他の者に身を任せるというのは。操縦方法はわかるか？君に任せる。はっ、決める。わかった。協力しよう。
Okay, guys. That's it. Thanks for the stream.
何か用か
I'll heal and go back to farming the Celio recipe. I won't clear the dungeon until tomorrow.
何か用か
The next one. Right? Prove it. I'll end stream on the moon. Alright? There we go. Alright, in my rush I forgot to change my yokai to my lower level yokai so it could gain experience. I'll do it as
力を
well.
貸そう。
I'll still be farming in my own time. Slowly. Using my long range sniping. I'll probably reach level 50 during that. I'll try to make sure to evolve it during stream. But don't count on it. Though I will continue main quest tomorrow on stream. I did not expect I'd be streaming Onigiri this much.
よし
Let's reach to those. To the team. Shizuka, Yoshi, and the teleport crystal for the dungeon. I need. Behind me is the Palace of Rain. There.
私も楽しかったよ。
Here we go. And what's this? Ah. And switch my yokai. Now also level him up. Stats up. This makes him stay longer, be able to take hits more. And there. Now I'll make another level 70 and combine it with this guy. Once he's reached level 100, I think that's the cap,
眼科で妖怪に
I'll combine it
どうかな
with Yuka. She has all these. And I'll feed her only level 100s. I have this guy. Oh, wait. Wait. What? Oh. I already have a level 70. I completely forgot about that. Huh. Okay. Okay. This one is actually my first level 70. So my first Kiji. First Kijimona that I ever got. But I don't think I'll be keeping him. I have also Kuroji, Black G, and Yuka. The Kijimona princess. She's not the empress, the haughty one. She's the princess, the nice one. So anyway, that's it for the stream today. Thank you, and see you tomorrow.